No wake, no wreckage, no witnesses who returned. Just charts marked with crosses where ships vanished near formations that had no name. Formations that moved between seasons. Formations that breathed. In the year 1250, Norse mariners recorded something in the waters of the North Atlantic that defied every map they carried. Not a storm, not rocks, an island that opened its mouth. The Konungs Skuggsjá, the King's Mirror, called it Rafgufa, official instruction for royal sons. Not legend, not sermon, a manual for survival at sea. But if it was real, why did no captain sail close enough to confirm it? The manuscript sits in the Royal Scriptorium in Bergen. Fresh parchment, dark ink that still smells of oak gall and iron. 300 folios written by a scholar whose name appears nowhere in the text. He was commissioned by King Håkon Håkonarsson to create an instruction manual for his sons, a guide to the world beyond the fjords, how to read stars, how to judge wind, how to survive winter storms in open water, practical knowledge for princes who would one day command fleets. But one section breaks the pattern. Folio 87, the chapter on sea creatures. The scholar does not begin with dragons or serpents from church mosaics. He begins with a question a student asked him during lessons in the royal hall. A question about islands that appear where no island should be. The tone shifts. The sentences become careful, measured. The scholar writes as if choosing every word to avoid being dismissed by the court as a fool spinning tales for silver. He has seen the prince's tutors lose their positions for less. For teaching astronomy that contradicted scripture. For describing lands the church claimed did not exist. So he writes with precision, with witnesses, with measurements that can be verified. He calls the creature Hafgufa. In some drafts scattered across his desk, it appears as Rafgufa. Both names share the same root. Haf means sea, Gufa means steam, or mist, or breath. The thing that breathes in the ocean, the thing that rises like vapor and settles like land. The description begins with size. The scholar does not compare it to a whale. He compares it to the largest island in the Norwegian chain. He writes that when the Hafgufa rests on the surface, it can be mistaken for a stretch of coastline. Mariners sailing past it report seeing cliffs, beaches, even grass along the upper ridges. But no birds circle above it. No surf breaks against it. And if a ship draws near, close enough to see detail, the island begins to sink. Not quickly. The descent happens over the span of an hour. Slow enough that a crew might not notice at first. Slow enough that a captain might think the tide is simply rising around them. But the water does not rise. The land descends. And as it does, a current forms. A whirlpool with no center. Just a slow, relentless pull toward the place where the cliffs were. The scholar provides details that separate his account from monastery tales of sea monsters painted on sanctuary walls. He writes that the Hafgufa does not hunt. It waits. It remains motionless for days, sometimes weeks, mouth open just below the waterline. Fish gather in the shadow it casts. Herring, cod. Entire schools drawn to the shelter of what looks like a reef or shallow shelf. And then, without warning, the mouth closes. The text does not describe teeth. It does not describe eyes. It describes only the motion. A slow contraction, like a bay narrowing to a strait, and everything inside, fish, seawater, debris, pulled into darkness. But the scholar adds one more observation, one that causes unease in the scriptorium when other monks read the draft. He writes that some fishermen claim to have seen the Hafgufa surface with objects caught in the folds of its skin. Broken oars, torn sailcloth. Once, a carved prow shaped like a dragon's head, the kind used on Norwegian nar vessels that carry goods between Bergen and the Faroes. The manual does not explain how these items came to rest on the creature. It does not speculate. It simply records the testimony and moves to the next section. Instructions on how to navigate near unfamiliar coastlines, how to test depth with weighted line, how to recognize false harbors. The scholar learned long ago that survival depends on what you can measure, not what you can explain. But someone reading the text in the royal court would understand the implication. If the Hafgufa could be mistaken for land, and if it surfaced in shipping lanes, then small vessels, nars, fairings, even longships low on supplies, might anchor beside it, might send men ashore to scout for fresh water, might tie off to what looked like solid rock while the crew rested. And when the island sank, those men would have only minutes to cut lines and row clear. If they hesitated, if they misjudged the pull of the current, if they were caught in the moment the mouth began to close, no one would record what happened next. No one would mark the chart. The sea would simply erase them. The scholar's sources are specific. He names 3 captains who gave testimony under oath in the assembly hall at Tunsberg during the spring session. Men whose reputations depend on truth. Men who swear before the Jarl and the bishop that they witnessed formations in the waters east of the Faroes. Formations that resembled land but moved with the current. Formations that fishermen warned them to avoid. One captain, Einar Sigurdsson, master of a merchant nar that trades between Trondheim and the Shetlands, described anchoring near what appeared to be a low island during a storm. His crew was exhausted. The winds had been against them for 3 days. They saw shelter, a place to wait out the weather. But when they drew within 2 ship lengths, the island began to shift, not like ice breaking apart, like skin wrinkling, like cloth pulled taut from beneath. Einar ordered the crew to cut the anchor line. They rowed with everything they had. But the current was already forming, a circular pull that dragged at the stern. They escaped only because the wind shifted at the exact moment they needed it. When Einar looked back, the island was gone, just open water. And something large moved beneath the surface, something that disturbed the waves in a pattern too wide to be a whale. He reported the incident to the harbour master in Bergen. The harbour master recorded it in the guild ledger. The entry is brief, no speculation, just coordinates and a warning. Other captains have reported similar formations in that region. The guild advises all vessels to avoid anchoring near land that shows no birds and no surf. The second captain, Gunnar Håkonsson, commands a fishing vessel that works the cod banks west of Kristiansund. He does not claim to have seen the Hafgufa directly, but he describes something his crew encountered during the summer herring run. A massive shadow beneath their boat, too large to be a whale, too still to be a school of fish. The shadow remained beneath them for most of the morning. His crew became afraid. They hauled in their nets and moved to another location. When they looked back, they saw the water above the shadow begin to churn. A vortex formed, small at first, then widening. The surface broke, not with a whale's blow, not with the crash of a wave, just a slow opening, like a cave mouth rising from below. And then it closed, and the vortex collapsed, and nothing remained but disturbed water and dead fish floating to the surface. Gunnar does not call it the Hafgufa. He does not call it anything. He simply reports what happened and warns other fishermen to watch for shadows that do not move. The guild records his testimony. The bishop's scribe makes a note, and the scholar includes it in the manual because it fits the pattern, because it matches descriptions from other crews, because it suggests something real. The third captain, Olaf Arnson, sailed for the king's fleet before retiring to merchant trade. He carries more authority than most. His word is trusted in court, and he tells a story that makes even the Jarl lean forward in his seat. During a voyage to Iceland in the autumn, his ship passed through a region of calm water. No wind, no current, just flat sea that reflected the sky like polished metal. His crew saw what looked like a reef ahead, a long formation that broke the surface in a smooth line. They altered course to avoid it, but as they passed, One of the men noticed something unusual. The reef had texture, not rock, not ice, something that looked like skin. And along the edges, where the formation met the water, there were folds, wrinkles, as if the surface were flexible. Olaf ordered his crew to keep rowing. He did not investigate. He did not stop. He simply marked the position on his chart and sailed past as quickly as the calm would allow. When they reached Iceland, he asked local fishermen if they knew of a reef in that position. None did. The waters there were known to be deep. Too deep for any formation to rise from the seabed and still break the surface. Olaf's chart still hangs in his hall. The reef is marked with a circle, and beside the circle, 3 words in Latin: non est insula. It is not an island. He will not sail that route again, and he advises other captains to do the same. These are the sources the scholar uses, not legends passed through generations, not tales heard in taverns, sworn testimony, given under oath, recorded in guild ledgers and assembly records, men who risked their reputations to report what they saw, men who had no reason to lie and every reason to stay silent. The scholar compiles their accounts, he compares details, he looks for patterns, and he finds consistency, the same size, the same behavior, the same warnings. Do not anchor near land that shows no birds. Do not trust formations that appear where charts show only deep water. Do not approach shadows that remain still beneath the surface. He writes it all into the manual, not as myth, not as allegory, as instruction, as something the king's sons need to know before commanding ships in northern waters. The Hafgufa is listed alongside storms and ice flows and shallow reefs. Just another hazard, just another thing that can kill a crew if they are careless. But there is something else in the text. Something the scholar does not write explicitly, but implies in the structure of his sentences. A question that sits beneath the surface of every description. If the creature exists, and if captains report it with such consistency, why has no fleet been dispatched to hunt it? Why has no expedition been launched to map its range? Why has the crown accepted these losses without demanding answers? The manual does not answer. It simply records and moves on. But in the margins of the draft, visible when the light strikes the parchment at the right angle, there are marks, crossed out sentences, phrases the scholar wrote and then erased. In one place, partially visible beneath fresh ink, a line reads, "The Jarl was informed. He chose not to act." The line was erased, but not completely, and anyone looking closely can still read it. The final draft of the Konungs Skuggsjar is presented to King Haakon in the Great Hall at Bergen during the winter feast. The king accepts it, praises the scholar's work, orders copies to be made for his son's education. The manuscript is placed in the royal library. It will be copied, studied, preserved, but no expedition is commissioned, no fleet sails to investigate the Hafgufa. The king issues no orders, the Jarl makes no plans, the church offers no guidance. The creature remains in the text, frozen in ink, and the waters between Norway and the Faroes remain unmarked, unclaimed, avoided. The Hanseatic merchants who dock in Bergen hear the reports. They ask questions, they consult their own records, and they find similar incidents in their ledgers. Ships lost between Bergen and the Faroes, no wreckage, no survivors. 17 vessels in the past 50 years. Not an unusual number for that stretch of water, but unusual in pattern. 12 of the 17 disappeared in calm conditions, clear skies, moderate wind. And 8 of those 12 were last sighted within 10 miles of the same coordinates. The merchants do not investigate. They mark the region as hazardous. They advise captains to take a longer route, farther north, away from the area where formations that look like islands have been reported. The detour adds 3 days to the voyage. It costs fuel. It increases risk of ice. But the League considers it safer than the direct route. No one explains why. The decision is recorded. The policy is implemented, and ships begin taking the northern route. The disappearances slow, then stop. and the Hafgufa fades into the background. Not forgotten, just avoided, just accepted as part of the cost of sailing northern waters. In the scriptorium, the scholar continues his work. He revises texts, he teaches students, he copies manuscripts for the Royal Library. But he does not write about the Hafgufa again. The subject is closed, the manual is complete, and his role is finished. But sometimes, late at night when the other monks are sleeping, he returns to folio 87. He reads the descriptions again, he studies the testimony, and he wonders what would have been found if someone had sailed close enough to look. The question remains in the margins, erased but still visible. The Jarl was informed. He chose not to act. Why did no authority demand investigation despite sworn testimony from trusted captains?